Thank you, Presley. So you're probably wondering, why am I the speaker here today? And I'll tell you a little story. There was a family in Germany during World War II, and they would let these Jews that were hiding from the Germans, they'd let them hide in their house, and they would teach them the gospel. And they would, avoid at all costs any of the Nazi policemen or Nazi army, and they would share the gospel with these people as they were hiding out. And then one day they were captured by the Nazi police. They were put in concentration camps. And they had two daughters, and the two daughters were put in the same concentration camp. So the Nazi guards, they put them in the worst part of this concentration camp. It was dirt floor, no beds, it was dark, and it had a huge infestation of fleas in this room. And these two girls would get up every morning and just scratch their skin all day long. And one day they were like, any day now, those policemen are going to come to our door and they're going to grab us and we're going to be put to death. But until that day, we're going to get up and we're going to talk about God to anybody who'll listen. So they stood at the door of their cabin or railroad cart or whatever it was they had them in. And they would sit there and tell the gospel and the story of Jesus. And a lot of these Jews knew it was their last day, or knew it was one of their last days. So they would come into the hallway and they would listen to these two girls tell about the gospel. And over time, they saved a lot of people. A lot of people became Christians right before they met their end. And so eventually, these two girls every day would get up and think, they're going to come get us. It's going to be our day to be put to death. It never happened. The Americans actually liberated this concentration camp and they set everyone free on the same day. And these two girls ran up to a guard and they grabbed him and said, "Why are we still alive? Why didn't you kill us?" And the guard said, "We didn't want to get fleas. We knew your cabin had fleas in it, and the only way we could come get you is to go into that cabin, and none of us wanted fleas. We saw y'all itching yourself, and so we didn't want to go in there." So fleas saved their life, and it gave them a platform to tell about Jesus. Cancer was my fleas, and that's why I'm here. So last year on May 9th, 2025, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. No cancer in my family, had no experience, didn't even know anything. Some of y'all have heard me say this, but the doctor came in and sat down, and he got real serious. And if y'all know me, that's really hard for me to get serious. And he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "You have stage 4 cancer." And I said, "Is there a stage 5? And he kind of made this funny face and he was like, "No, 4's the worst." I was like, "That is terrible. There should be like a 1 to 10. Someone says you got 4 and you feel like, okay, that's not terrible." But no, 4 is the worst. So I went home that day and you have some strange conversations the day you find out something like that. We got the kids out of school. They came home. Janeth and I looked at each other, tried to come up with some ideas and maybe some answers. And that night, when I was alone, I prayed to God. And I said, "I can't control whether I live or die from this. I have no say in that whatsoever. Science, whether God has a plan for me to go beyond a certain day, that's up to him. But I said, just please don't let this be for nothing. Please don't let me get cancer and it not affect anyone in my life positively. Let it be something." And then I did what everyone does in dire situations. You try to make a deal with God. And as much as we're told not to do that, we do that. I'm like, "God, if you'll let me live, I'll tell this story till I'm blue in the face till my last day. And I'm going to do that anyway." But I told him, if you have chose for me to die, and this is going to be the end, I will fight to the bitter end, because that's how you made me. And those are conversations that I had. So I want to tell you what I learned from my situation over the last year. People are amazing. A lot of you sitting here in purple, you can't wait to get out of the panhandle. I know it. I was there. I graduated high school 30 years ago this week. So I remember we couldn't wait to get out of the panhandle. But if you get cancer or something bad happens to you, this is the best place in the world to be. You can't imagine how people reached out to me when they found out I had cancer. people I barely knew, people I've known my whole life. People that I didn't even know knew my name would call me, and they would say the nicest thing you can say to someone, and that is, I'm going to pray for you. I went out here 30 minutes ago, 3 people told me they've been praying for me. That is, you know what that means? It means when they sat down and they talked to their God, they took time out of that conversation and prayed for Scotty Davis. That feels pretty good, just in case you don't know. And there's a lot of people praying for all of you. This is a very big time in your life, right? A lot of things going on. Believe me, all these parents know we've been celebrating it for a month. You're supposed to graduate high school, by the way, so we will celebrate it for a while. But people are going to tell you, when you go to college, I'll be praying for you. When you go to work, I'll be praying for you. When you start your family, I'll be praying for you. There's nothing nicer anybody can say to you. The second thing I learned is that life is not fair. Thank goodness it's not fair. Jesus was perfect and they nailed him on a cross. If it was fair, I should be on the cross and not him. So life's not fair, and thank goodness. And then lots of people have asked me how my thoughts have been towards God and Jesus through getting cancer. And are you angry, or do you have those certain feelings? When I get to heaven, and I have no idea when that will be, I will drop to my knees and tell Jesus, thank you for giving me cancer. And I'll explain why. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened. The relationships in my life with my wife and my kids will never be better than they are right now. It's unbelievable. When all your earthly possessions mean nothing to you, it's amazing what matters to you. So I'm going to tell you what I learned and what it means to me and what you need to take from this story. Life is precious. You'll be told that all the time. You'll be told how much time matters. Or someone goes, man, if I could go back to when I was 18, this is what I do. Knowing what I know now, people will say that to you. They always said that to me. I don't believe any of that, by the way. I do think you carry along some knowledge as you get older on what you would probably change if you went back. But I'd also put value in important things. When I got cancer, you could give me any watch in the world, any jewelry in the world, any amount of money. It meant nothing. That would not help my cause. But you saying you'll pray for me, that was important. The advice that I wish I would have known when I was 18 years old or 19 or however old you are sitting out there, you are an average of your best 5 friends. Do you help that average or do you hurt that average? The people around you, are they helping that average? Because I'm going to tell you something. When I was at MD Anderson, I spent 30 nights in MD Anderson Hospital last year. And I was on the 12th floor, and it was all colorectal cancer people. In case you don't know this, the cure rate for stage 4 colorectal cancer is 14%. I know what my odds are. I know exactly what they are. They tell you first thing when you get cancer, do not Google anything. I Googled, what is the cure rate for stage 4 cancer the first day? And it said 14%. I was like, so you're saying there's a chance? Because the only numbers that matter to me are 1 and 0. 0 means I got no chance. All of us in this room are going to die at something. Mine was just going to come a little sooner. 1% means I got a chance. I got a fighting chance. I'm going to fight either way. If you give me 1%, that's called hope. And that's very important. So, I saw these people on the 12th floor. Some of them you could tell have money, prestige, probably big titles, lots of letters after their name, lots of letters before their name, and they were completely alone in the hospital. I had my wife Janet, Presley, Hartley, Boone. Every day when I'd get up, they'd help me out of bed. They'd help me walk down the hall. And I would see people that had to pay someone to walk them down the hall. Now I'm going to tell you one piece of advice that you're going to want in your life, and I hope you never have to use it. Make sure you're not in that hospital alone. How you live your life and the people you're friends with from right now till that day are going to matter on who's going to walk you around in that hallway. I felt so sorry for people that had things in their possession that I wanted my whole life. And they didn't have the one thing I had, which was someone helping me walk up and down that hall. So look at your best 5 friends over the next few years and decide if they're helping your average. So, little marriage advice I'm going to give you. And I know what you're thinking, why in the world would he be giving us marriage advice? But I stole this from Lou Holtz. If you don't know who Lou Holtz is, he was a coach, college football coach, and he had a real funny voice, which is kind of funny to think about him yelling at football players like that, but he did. And I read this in his book and I loved it. And it changed the way I am in my marriage. He said, if you want to raise great children, love their mom or dad and make sure they see it. So I read that in a book and I was like, I'm not really good at a lot of things. Maybe I could be a great husband. So I started every day, I would tell my wife she's beautiful. I wouldn't tell her because it's like checking a box or like, all right, got that done today. I would tell her she's beautiful because I think she's beautiful. And you know how hard it is to be mad at me if I just told you you're beautiful? A little cheat code there for you also. So the other thing I did was, first 10 years of our marriage, I was absolutely horrible on birthdays and holidays. It'd like get to the morning of a birthday or anniversary and I'd be like, I didn't do anything. What do I do now? So then I got this idea, I better get better at this. If I'm wanting this thing to last the rest of my life, I better get better at this. So I came up with this idea called 10 Days of JJ. If y'all don't know, my wife's name's Janet. Her nickname is JJ because everyone has trouble pronouncing Janet. So they call her JJ. So I came up with 10 Days of JJ. Her birthday's November 17th, so starting November 7th. For 10 days, I got her something every day. And some of it wasn't great, big presents, or anything like that, but it's just something nice every day. Because the way my mind works is instead of running 5 miles like a lot of people do to stay in shape, I train for a 100-mile race. So that's how my mind works, so I had to do 10 days of JJ. Do you know how hard it is to be mad at your husband if he does 10 days of your birthday? These are some secrets I'm trying to tell you. So when I got cancer, who's the one that saved my life? JJ. She dropped everything in her life and helped me through that situation. So when you pick your spouse, you don't pick them for who's going to be fun on holidays or who's going to be great. You pick them based on when that happens, who's going to walk you down that hall. Who's going to see you at your worst and not care? And then give them 10 days of JJ. Remember I told you that. The most valuable thing in life is time. You can't buy it, you can't steal it. Not one person in this room knows how much time they have. Not one person. I got a pretty good idea, but I believe that I can outlive any expectations I give myself. But time is so precious. Cherish it and always value it. The greatest gift you can give your kids is time. That's really all they want. You see a kid that comes from big wealth or a kid that comes from no wealth. The thing they want is time. They want time with you. Those are important. Mindset that helped me with cancer. I call it stacking W's. I know that's probably foreign. What stacking W's means is get wins. Figure out a way to win at something. I spoke at a prison a couple months ago, and when he got done, I asked if anybody had any questions. And this guy in the front row, I don't know where he's from. I think they said he's from somewhere in Houston, but he had been in prison his entire life. I said, has anybody got any questions? He raised his hand, and he said, how in the world do you have hope? I didn't know what he meant, so I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you got cancer. 14%? Like, how in the world do you have hope? So I asked him, I said, do you have hope? And he said, absolutely not. I've been in prison since I was less than 10 years old. Every person in my life has told me how terrible I am. I'll probably be in prison the rest of my life. He said, how do I get hope? And I sat there a minute. Every now and then in life, God kind of takes the wheel and answers a question. And a minute after the answer comes out, you're like, there's no way that came from me. And it was stacking W's. I looked at this kid right in the face, and I said, figure out a way to win. Get up in the morning, make your bed, that's a W. Eat breakfast, that's a W. Say a little prayer, that's a W. Do 10 push-ups. That's a W. Tell someone else good morning. That's a W. If you get up every day and try to get from morning to lunch and stack as many W's as you can, you won't believe how great your day will be. If you want to accomplish a goal, that's how you accomplish a goal. Does anybody know how you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Stack W's. Each bite matters. So when you have dreams or big goals or anything that you want to do in life, you do it by stacking little W's. I even heard a Navy SEAL say one time, how do you get through BUDS training? That's like the worst training ever that they send them through. And they said, I got up in the morning and tried to make it to lunch. And I promised myself at lunch we'd decide whether or not we were going to quit. Then they got to lunch and they're like, all right, I feel okay. I can make it to dinner. At dinner, I'll quit. And then they got to dinner and they were like, okay, maybe I'll just ride this thing out a little longer. I ran a 100-mile race that the entire race was over 10,000 feet to altitude. People ask me all the time, how in the world did you do that and why in the world did you do that? And my answer was, I ran 1 mile 100 times. In my head, I'd be like, get to the top of this trail and then we'll talk about quitting. And I just did that long enough, I stacked W's. And when you have cancer and it's not going well, you don't think about all the treatment you're going to have to do and all the things that are going to come back. You think, what do I got to do to get to today? And that's the W. So anything in your life that you want to accomplish or you want to get through, stack W's. You always hear people say, dream big. I definitely agree. But I'll tell you this, never take criticism from someone that you wouldn't take advice from. Y'all live in a time that you've already been told most of your life how hard you got it because of social media and cameras on phones. And some of y'all have a lot of experience in those things going bad. And everyone in my generation says the same thing. Thank goodness they didn't have cameras on the phones when we were in high school. But y'all have done pretty good. And I'll tell you, the hardest part of what y'all have is the comments. Someone posts a picture of you or someone says something about you and you go through the comments and it's, there could be 95 awesome messages and there's one negative and that's the one you think about forever. And it hurts. Don't take criticism from anybody that you wouldn't ask advice from. Have heroes. Every single one of my heroes that I had on May 7th were different than the ones I had on May 8th. Now my heroes are totally different. Some of them are nurses at MD Anderson. Completely changed my life. If you pick nursing as your occupation and you work in oncology at the toughest hospital in the world, you're an angel. I don't care what anybody says. You're one of my heroes. Those people saw me in the worst you could ever see someone, and all they did was help. And they were great. So if you're a nurse or a doctor or anything medical, remember that. Last thing, go to God and ask Him to take your life and use it. It's amazing what happens when you do that. You have a lot in your future and a lot of exciting things. But when you ask God to use you, He will. My favorite verse through the last year has been Romans 8:18. It goes, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us." That means no matter how bad the pain is here, when we get to the end, it's going to be pretty nice. They call it paradise. I'm pretty excited about that, by the way. I don't want to get there faster, but I'm pretty excited about when it happens. And to think about all the suffering that could possibly happen doesn't pale in comparison to what we'll get at the end. You will have pain. There's no way. No one in this room is getting out of life without some pain. Some of you have had a lot more than others, and some of you have had a lot more than me. And I'm just telling you what helped me get through it. Put value in what will matter when those sufferings come. We talked about your 5 friends. We talked about your spouse. We talked about goals, dreams, all these things. Put value in the things that matter. I can't wait to see where all of you go from here. It's nothing but exciting. And everyone behind you is going to pray for you. And like I said, that's the nicest thing anybody could do for you. Now you pray for us.